So another edition of the Secure Dynamics TechCast. With me, I have a multiple-time former guest, Helen Patton, who's the CISO at Ohio State University. Welcome back, Helen.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
Glad to host you. And then a longtime friend and co-founder and CTO at Netscope. Welcome, Krishnan.
Thank you, Krishnan. Glad to be here as well.
Thanks. So the topic is something that I know we exchanged emails about this. It's not something that I frankly even thought about until you brought it up. And then now in hindsight, it looks like, hey, this is a really important piece of data security. And again, coming from education side. So Helen, I'll ask you this question, right? Which is pre-pandemic, pandemic, post-pandemic, whatever the case may be, I think there's a lot of student data, right, from the time of application to grades, et cetera, that continue to be very valuable. And to me, it kind of hit home when I think it was about a month ago when the school district in Las Vegas, there was a ransomware attack and they had to pay up, right? So talk a little bit about, I mean, there's obviously a lot of regulations around healthcare data and financial data. There isn't so much about student information, though this could be make or break for many of them if some of these things come out. So talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what does PII and extension, what does student, even things like student grades look like?
Sure. So within the school system, all the way from kindergarten through to college, student data is regulated by the Department of Education, and it is regulated in terms of there's definitions of what is included and what is not included. So, for example, it is academic records, absolutely, but when you get into the college space, if a student goes to an on-campus student medical facility, that's also considered FERPA. That's not considered HIPAA medical records, right? So there is medical information that becomes a student record. So that is regulated by the Department of Education. Within that, where there is student financial aid information, that is subject to banking regulations. So when you're a college, particularly, that is accepting federal financial aid on behalf of its students, you are regulated both by the Department of Education for student records and academic records, but you're also regulated like a bank through the Department of Education as well. So you're subject to the same kind of auditing and reporting requirements. So from a CISO perspective, if I have a breach of student financial information, I have to report that within 48 hours into the Department of Education, regardless of any other state privacy regulations that we might be subject to. So student data, and especially when you're a college accepting students from all over the world, you are potentially subject to an awful lot of regulation because of that student data.
So Krishna, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to add another flavor to that. As Helen was talking, I got reminded of a few friends of mine whose kids are on campus right now, and one of the big things that they have to worry about being on campus is actually go for COVID testing, I think twice a week, right? Yes. So now you're looking at this massive amount of student information on top of what is already being collected. So talk a little bit about, again, given your pivotal role and the number of CISOs you connect with, how is this long stream of data? Who owns the data? Is it subject to state regulation, subject to, like Helen said, I mean, there's lots of different departments that probably have an axe to grind over here.
Yeah, no, sure. So basically from our vantage point, what we are observing, and I would love to hear Helen's view on that as well, is over time, we are seeing more and more organizations moving their data to the cloud. They're no longer hosting it on premises because it's not economically feasible to do so. And in fact, vendors like Microsoft is making it really hard for you to host on your premises, right? And when it comes to cloud, what we are finding is two things. One is not all cloud services are created equal. So some of them do take better control of your data in terms of giving you some guarantees that it's encrypted at rest and so on, right? But nevertheless, there's also many other cloud services that where if you read the terms and conditions, nobody does, right? If you read the terms and conditions, you find that once you upload the data, they have ownership of the data. And what we are finding, not specific to education sector, but in general, is this kind of movement of data from cloud to cloud is increasing, right? I think currently we had some statistics in the last cloud data report that over 20% of data is moving from cloud to cloud. And so when it comes to like concerns like what you said, abiding by regulations, you got to be concerned about that movement and how you get visibility and control of that data.
So Helen, a question for you, and I got reminded of this as Krishna was talking. This is how my brain works. I got an email from my mom this morning. She's in India, and she forwards this email she got from Microsoft saying, don't worry about it. You get 5 gig of OneDrive data free. Hereafter, anything you're going to be storing locally is also going to be stored in the cloud. And she asked me, it's like, what am I supposed to do with it, right? And so here, looking at it, it's like she's already in the cloud. And how does somebody even grapple with this, right? So again, if it's a student and you have local, maybe it's a research paper or something else, it's now stored in OneDrive, and you leave Ohio State and go further education, go into the industry, you've left a digital trail behind. Maybe you don't even know it, right? So again, from your perspective, is this even a feasible problem to get your head around? And number two, what do you go about doing about it?
The life of a student through their academic career is quite varied, and it's also complicated by, if I'm thinking about college students, it's complicated by the kind of study that they're doing as well. So while schools will have a cloud-based learning management system, and I can, as a CISO, I can make sure that that vendor is appropriate and they've got the appropriate security controls, a student can choose where they want to, what cloud services they want to use to do their study. Mm-hmm. You know, do they want to be in OneDrive and a Microsoft platform to be sharing a team assignment online? Do they want to be using a Google Share? Do they want to be using Prezi? Like we don't limit them to the tools they use. So yeah, there's digital exhaust from being a student left everywhere. What we have to do from an institutional perspective is to be clear on which are the sources and the vendors that are appropriate to use from an institutionally protected perspective, and just be aware that data is also going off in other places. But as long as the students are making that call, and it's not that the institution is making that call without the students knowing, then it's really an individual decision. In the same way, if you're a customer of a bank, you're going to log on to the bank's website. But if you download your statement and then you decide to put it on OneDrive, if that gets lost for some reason, that's really on you as a customer. That's not on the bank. We have the same kind of relationship with our students.
So, Krishnan, go ahead.
I had just a follow-up to what Helen said. So in that case, so generally in enterprise, like organizations like us, once you're an employee, all intellectual property belongs to the organization, right? Is that true for universities as well, or no?
No, not at all. And in fact, particularly if you're dealing with, so students are one thing. So if you think of students like customers, there are certain elements, like their official transcript and so forth is institutional data, right? But if you're a researcher, so you're an employee, you're a researcher, or you're an instructor and you generate your own intellectual property to teach students with, there is policy around what is considered university material and what is considered intellectual property of the creator. So it's certainly not as cut and dry as saying, well, you did it on working hours on our equipment and our technology. That does not necessarily mean that it's university-owned property.
Got it.
So, Krishna, one last question to you, right? Which is, as we were talking through this, is this almost like the borderless cloud, which is you don't even know you're in the cloud, but you're in the cloud. So, again, is that a new wave of realization, saying, hey, you could be having, like, again, going back to Mom's example, she has a Google Chromebook right now, and just that experience of using and storing everything in a laptop versus saying, hey, it's natively Google Drive. Right. So are you seeing that awareness, especially for non-tech organizations, to realize, hey, you think you're not in the cloud, but not only are you in the cloud, you're actually creating more data?
Yeah, I think that awareness is increasing over the years. I mean, back 5 years ago, when we went and tried to highlight the problem, people said, no, we don't have a problem. And that's when we kind of introduced this concept of discovery, right? Hey, at least give me your 1 month's worth of logs. Let me go and analyze it. And in fact, we used to have a wager, like how many cloud services are you using? Oh, using about 10. We come back, it's like 500, right? But that I think is changing. I'm definitely seeing that change over the time right now. And now I think boards are also like demanding CISOs to be like accountable in terms of what kind of services are being used and what kind of risk profile is being taken. So definitely there's been a change there. And one of the things that also this kind of helps organizations like Netscope, right, is we no longer have to worry about data stores on-prem. That is almost vanishing. Mm-hmm. So you used to have a whole set of security solutions dealing with on-prem, like NFS and SIVs. I wouldn't say it's completely gone, but it's a vanishing breed. And that gives at least organizations like OSU and others, right, better control, because now you can you can put some controls in the cloud where you are able to observe the activities and what's going on there.
Okay, one last question, Helen. From a cybersecurity training perspective, right? I mean, you've seen CISOs and employees, and is that the same equation that you would use again with students in terms of security training awareness?
A lot of it is the same, actually. People have a thought that young people today are digital natives and therefore there's nothing for them to know. They're really wrong about that, actually. And I say this as a parent of a 21-year-old college student. You know, that they're very comfortable with the tech they know, but the tech they know is not what they're asked to being used at school or in the office, in the workplace. And so they're coming to this tech. They may be more comfortable experimenting with the tech, which in some ways makes them more dangerous than boomers. So they may be more comfortable trying the tech on for size, but they don't know how to be secure in their usage any more than any other generation is. So you've still got to do the same sort of training awareness with them around what the threats are, you know, how to appropriately handle the data, that kind of stuff. And they are an interesting generation. That they are one of my threat vectors that I have to worry about as CISO at a university, right? There is always a student who, for whatever reason, is trying really hard to do something they shouldn't with technology. And so we have to deal with that too in the higher ed environment in ways that you wouldn't have to in the private sector with a college age customer, you know. So yeah, training and awareness is definitely a thing we still have to deal with.
I think one thing there, just to add on to what Helen said, that we are seeing more becoming like prevalent is security tools, especially like what we build, right? We are building in the ability to coach users on the fly. Rather than go separately and take a user awareness training, you're trying to do something now. Let me tell you what you're doing is not good because of these reasons, right? And that's kind of helping a lot. In fact, now many of the customers are demanding that, hey, I want to be able to get my users involved in the security policy enforcement so that they know what is right and what is wrong, and they can be within those guardrails. So definitely, yeah, that's something that I'm seeing a lot happening in the enterprise world.
Very cool. Again, thanks for your time, Helen. Thanks for your time, Krishna. Looking forward to future conversations.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.